Your Majesties, heads of state, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it is a great honor to be able to play a part in this opening ceremony of the 27th Conference of the Parties. Mr. President, thank you. Mr. Secretary General, thank you for your leadership of the entire world. We are all here today because we continue to use the thin blue shell of atmosphere surrounding our planet as an open sewer. Today, as every day, we are spewing 162 million tons of man-made heat-trapping global warming pollution into the sky. It adds up and accumulates and lingers there. On average, each molecule lingers 100 years, and the accumulated amount now traps as much extra heat as would be released by 600,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs exploding every day on our planet. That's why we're seeing these disasters. And the pattern is very clear. It's getting steadily worse. We have a credibility problem, all of us. We're talking, and we're starting to act, but we're not doing enough. It is a choice to continue this pattern of destructive behavior. We have other choices. In my faith tradition, I learned a teaching that is common to all three of the Abrahamic religions, that God has set before humanity a choice between blessings and curses, between life and death. We face that choice today. We can continue the culture of death that surrounds our addiction to fossil fuels by digging up dead life forms from eons ago and burning them recklessly in ways that create more death, including 8.7 million people every year that die from the air pollution, principally caused by the burning of fossil fuels. The curses that we are continuing to choose are ever more apparent. We saw them on that amazingly powerful film, 1/3 of Pakistan underwater, 1,700 people killed. A heat wave in China that lasted 70 days with the heat above 40 degrees, 104 Fahrenheit, over a vast area of China. Stronger storms, bigger downpours, rain bombs, worse floods. Another million displaced in Nigeria 2 weeks ago. Another million in Chad a few days after that. The Nile Delta being salinated, just as Hannibal's fields were salted. We are causing the salting of the greatest agricultural area in Egypt, as well as in the Mekong Delta and elsewhere. Droughts are drying up the mighty Mississippi River in my country, the Tigris and the Euphrates in the cradle of civilization, the Po River in Italy, the Loire in France, the Rhine in Germany. All over the world, the greatest reservoirs in North America, Lake Mead and Lake Powell, are reaching what is called dead pool status. Starvation and famine in the Horn of Africa, devastation in Madagascar. And the areas of our world that are presently considered by doctors uninhabitable because of the combination of heat and humidity are relatively small today, but they are due to expand to the point where experts are predicting as many as 1 billion climate migrants crossing international borders in the balance of this century. Think of the millions that are crossing borders now and the xenophobia and authoritarian populism that is caused by a large surge of refugees. And then imagine, if you will, what 1 billion climate refugees would do. It would end the possibilities of self-governance. We have to act. We know that tragically, across the nations of Africa, these impacts are even worse. And in the Pacific Islands and elsewhere, and the poor suffer the most. The late Archbishop Desmond Tutu said climate change is the apartheid of our times. We don't have to choose curses. We can choose blessings, including the blessings of renewable energy. We are now in the early stages of a sustainability revolution that has the magnitude of the Industrial Revolution and the speed of the digital revolution. If we invest in it and stop subsidizing the culture of death, we can save ourselves. Dollar for dollar, each dollar spent in renewable energy creates 3 times as many jobs as dollars spent in fossil energy. And this sustainability revolution is massively deflationary at just the time when the world is trying to find new ways to battle inflation. The International Energy Agency has called solar energy the cheapest energy in the entire history of the world. And Africa can be the renewable energy superpower. Africa has 40% of the entire world's global potential for renewables. The potential for solar and wind in Africa is 400 times larger than their total fossil fuel reserves. And these are real possibilities. This is not pie in the sky. If you look at all of the new electricity generation installed worldwide last year, 90% of it was renewable because it is cheaper almost everywhere, and in 2 years it will be cheaper in 100% of the world. But it is not enough to simply increase our support for clean energy if we are simultaneously backtracking on our commitments against developing and financing fossil fuels. The world's leading scientists and energy experts have told us that any new fossil fuel development is incompatible with 1.5 degrees as the limit to the temperature increase.
And I want to congratulate Simon Steele, a son of the Caribbean, of whom we're very proud, in his new role as Executive Director. I came here to say a few things, but the chorus that we've had from this stage has been clear. I don't need to repeat that we have the power of choice. Every speaker on this platform had. I don't need to repeat that this is the COP that needs action. All of us, as a chorus, have said that. I don't need to repeat the horror and the devastation wreaked upon this earth over the course of the last 12 months since we met in Glasgow, whether the apocalyptic floods in Pakistan, or the heat waves from Europe to China, or indeed, in the last few days in my own region, the devastation caused in Belize by Tropical Storm Lisa, or the torrential floods a few days ago in St. Lucia. We don't need to repeat it, because a picture spoke 1,000 words earlier. But what we do need to do is to understand why we are not moving any further. 1.5 to stay alive cannot be that mantra. And I take no pride in being associated with having to repeat it over and over and over. We have the collective capacity to transform. We're in the country that built pyramids. We know what it is to remove slavery from our civilization. We know what it is to be able to find a vaccine within 2 years when a pandemic hits us. We know what it is to put a man on the moon, and now we put in rover on Mars. We know what it is. But the simple political will that is necessary not just to come here and make promises, but to deliver on them and to make a definable difference in the lives of the people who we have a responsibility to serve, seems still not to be capable of being produced. I ask us how many more and how much more must happen. And I say so because there is no simplicity in it. We get it. I come from a small island state that has high ambition, but that is not able to deliver on that high ambition because the global industrial strategy that we have has fault lines in it. Our ability to access electric cars or our ability to access batteries or photovoltaic panels are constrained by those countries that have a dominant presence and can produce for themselves, but the global south remains at the mercy of the global north on these issues. But it isn't only in that. We heard Al Gore just now speak about the difference in the cost of capital to those of us in the global south. And I ask us, how many more people must speak before those of us who have the capacity to instruct our directors at the World Bank, is that called the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development only for the 20th century? At the IMF, which at least has been trying more than the World Bank? How many more countries must falter, particularly in a world that is now suffering the consequences of war and inflation, and countries therefore are unable to meet the challenges of finding the necessary resources to finance their way to net zero? This world looks still too much like it did when it was part of an imperialistic empire. The global north borrows between interest rates of between 1% to 4%. The global south of 14%. And then we wonder why the just energy partnerships are not working. Similarly, we ask ourselves if countries that want to finance their way to net zero and want to do the right thing can't get the critical supplies, will they not have to rely again on natural gas as that clean bridge? This is the bald reality. And we have come here to ask us to open our minds to different possibilities. We believe that we have a plan. We believe that there can be the establishment of a climate mitigation trust that unlocks $5 trillion of private sector savings if we can summon the will to use the SDRs, 500 billion of SDRs, special drawing rights, in a way that unlocks the private sector capital. We believe that that requires a change in the attitude of Congress, because the agreement that establishes the International Monetary Fund requires 85% to change that agreement. And if the United States government has 17% of the quota, then it can't be done, Mr. Gore, without your Congress. Similarly, we accept that there was and must be a commitment to unlocking concessional funding for climate vulnerable countries. There is no way that developing countries who have been graduated can fight this battle without access to concessional funding. We heard it on this stage from the head of my old alma mater at LSU. We believe that it is critical that we address the issue of loss and damage. The talk must come to an end. And I'd like to salute Denmark and Belgium and Scotland for their own modest ways of trying to accept the precepts and principles of loss and damage as critical and as morally just. But for loss and damage to work, We believe that it can't only be an issue of asking state parties to do the right thing, although they must. But we believe that the non-state actors and the stakeholders, the oil and gas companies, and those who facilitate them need to be brought into a special convocation between now and COP28. How do companies make $200 billion in profits in the last 3 months and not expect to contribute at least 10 cents in every dollar of profit to a loss and damage fund? This is what our people expect. And I ask us, as we reflect on what a loss and damage fund can look like and who should access it, that we convene a special convocation that doesn't only involve state parties, but non-state actors, such as the same companies. We believe as well that the time has come for the introduction of natural disaster and pandemic clauses in our debt instruments. I said that if Barbados hit tomorrow, because we have natural disaster clauses, God forbid if we are hit tomorrow, we unlock 18% of GDP over the next 2 years, because what we do is effectively put a pause on all of our debt and put it at the end for 2 years and put it at the end, and we pay back that money at the end. But what we get is the flexibility in the first 2 years to address issues of damage and loss. And finally, we believe that the multilateral development banks have to reform. Yes, it is time for us to revisit Bretton Woods. Yes, it is time for us to remember that those countries who sit in this room today did not exist at the time that the Bretton Woods institutions were formed for the most part. And therefore we have not seen, we have not been heard sufficiently. And if we are therefore to rise to the occasion, to play our part to stop the tragic loss of life that we have seen on these screens and the impact on livelihoods that we are feeling across our countries, then there needs to be a new deal with respect to the Bretton Woods institutions. And we need to ensure that they have a different view to their risk appetite, that we look at the SDRs, and that we look at other innovative ways to expand the lending that is available from billions to trillions. My friends, the time is running out on us. And yes, we have the power of choice. When asked what should he do when he became president of South Africa, should he pursue a path of vengeance or should he seek to build a state, Nelson Mandela chose to be able to build a state and to keep a country together. He chose blessings instead of curse because he believed that it would make a defining difference. When given the choice of how to treat to post-war Europe, President Truman settled the Marshall Plan that made the definable difference to the countries that were responsible, yes, for the destruction of so much and for the loss of life of so many. But in spite of that, they chose to rise above it. I ask us today, what will our choice be? We have the power to act or the power to remain passive and do nothing. I pray that we will leave Egypt with a clear understanding that the things that are facing us today are all interconnected. I thank President El-Sisi for his comments that there needs to be peace, because countries like ours continue to suffer as a result of a war that we have no part of, a war that we want to see come to an end. Our people on this earth deserve better, and what is more, our leaders know better. Because while many of us may not have been alive during the great wars, the consequences of those wars still live with us, and we have the capacity to choose differently. I ask the people of the world, and not just the leaders, therefore, to hold us accountable and to ask us to act in your name to save this earth and to save the people of this earth. The choice is ours. What will you do? What will you choose to save? Thank you.
شكراً للسيدة ميا موتلي رئيسة وزراء دولة بربيدوس. هناك العديد من الطرق للتعبير عن هذه الظاهرة التي
There's several ways of describing this phenomenon which is harming our planet. Some think in terms of initiatives, and others are thinking of implementation to bring about change. And there are, of course, others who are thinking and expressing themselves through art and inspiration.
She nourished them with her love. They were hungry for more. They left her dry, ill, taking all that she's got. She taught them a lesson they didn't learn. Instead of loving her, they flood her with hurt. They shut their eyes and ears. They sit back and watch as the trees burn, coastlines flood, land that bears, the seas rise, the ice melts. Now is the time to act. Together, we can heal Mother Earth. Together, for implementation.
ضيوف مصر الكرام، شكراً للمشاركة في الدورة 27 من قمة المناخ.
Thank you for your participation in the opening ceremony of the 27th session of the Conference of Parties here in Sharm el-Sheikh, City of Peace, City of the Environment, City of Hope. We are all convinced that we will be able to deliver the results expected of us. This collective action for implementation. Together for implementation. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished guests, kindly exit the hall to prepare for the upcoming session scheduled in 1 hour. Thank you very much.